Thank you for choosing Alternatives, an OK TV production. Our local cable company provides the public access channel where across the nation, ordinary people take part in producing their own community television programs. Whether they're expressing viewpoints on issues affecting their neighborhoods or highlighting creative events and scholastic achievements in their surrounding areas, people are forging working relationships with new friends, learning new things, and putting new ideas to the test. Our program is called Alternatives, and its purpose is to provide a venue for ideas and subject matter mainstream media would otherwise overlook. I'm Al DiGiacomo. Welcome as we start our show with a new year with several new members joining our Access TV team, striving to give you more options, more choices, more selections to offer you an alternative. Today, our guest is David Geiger. David is a native of Dallas, Texas, who now resides in Nyack, New York, where he attended Amber College and was a trained psychotherapist and a family crisis interventionist. While recovering from a severe automobile accident in 1990, David began a spiritual awakening. This was influenced by a PBS special that featured drumming techniques and men's work that led him as a co-founder of the men's gathering place of Dallas, Texas, where they explored who men really are and are providing mentors and role models needed for today's manhood. David, thank you so much for coming down to speak with us today.
How are you?
I'm very well. David, let's begin with the PBS special with Robert Bly and the journey that set you upon your present quest.
That particular special, it was an interview between Robert Bly and Bill Moyers. What happened in that is that they touched some chords in my heart. I only got to see like the last 15 minutes of it, and I spent a good amount of time trying to find the rest of that. I was recovering from an automobile accident. I had a lot of time on my hands. I'm speaking in terms of months. Robert Bly showed up. He's a nationally known poet, and he showed up in Dallas, Texas during the time of the Gulf War. It was quite outstanding what he did. He challenged the audience. He challenged the men there to express themselves and to take responsibility for being fathers and to really share who and what is really going on with them. He talked much about that we as men tend to be much more cerebral, which is not our basic nature, but we tend to stay there because it's a safe place for us. We don't express ourselves particularly well.
So where did that lead you? I understand you did some traveling after you started to recover and really started to pursue this dream of yours.
Well, actually, there was after that particular performance where I did meet him in person. There was some people out front handing out some brochures. They had started a very, very small men's group, and I joined that group, and things began to happen, and I was invited to be a co-facilitator, etc. We did a number of workshops, and we explored men's issues. This is not about putting women down. This is not a barefoot and pregnant kind of thing. This is not, there's no competition. This is not about women.
What would the subject matter that you would explore in the men's work, in the men's group?
Well, there were younger men, older men, and a lot of men in their mid-30s and 40s, looking at, you know, kind of the old Patti Page song, "Is That All There Is?" I mean, am I to work? You know, was I born to work, to raise a family, and to die? The suicide rate for men is about 20 times greater between the ages of 30 and 65, is about 20 times greater for men than for women. We're not really, in some sense, we're not living a fullness of life, and we're not exploring who we really are. Men who are examining themselves are finding often that we're empty. We're not coming up with ways that we can express who we are. And in that, it becomes more and more difficult to sustain the standard male role. You know, we're very short on role models. We're distant with our children often. We tend to be detached, and you know, weekends we like to spend time with ourselves, and often we find ourselves always, or almost always, in the company of women. When we find ourselves in trouble with ourselves, that's another time that we often are looking for a time to, when I'm hurt, when I'm personally hurt, when I'm doing that kitchen floor time. You know, I'm in trouble. I've got problems. I'm on my knees. I'm making my prayers. The person I go to who feels safe for me likely is to be a woman. We explored this kind of issues. How is it that we don't have any male friends in our life anymore?
And why is this? What is the real basis of the root problem for men being men, David?
Part of it is the relationship that we had with our fathers. Most of our fathers, in general, I'm generalizing,
sure,
tended to be somewhat rather detached from the family experience. This is because of the rigors of work, and we're no longer a rural society where we would have been working alongside our fathers, etc. It's no longer a time of father-to-son trade kind of situations. We were basically reared and hopefully nurtured by our mothers. And long story short, we've been taught how to be men by our mothers, and our mothers don't know how to be men.
And this creates a big rift between how men either mentor other men. What's the connection between a man explaining his innermost feelings to another man?
Well, for example, as you said, yes, there's a rift. We've somewhere along the line, somewhere along likely the Industrial Revolution, as some authors and have said, that's when the connection was lost. Of men being with men, you know, these days when men are with men, we tend to head for a ball game, maybe have a few beers, go fishing, this or that, or play pool, or that kind of thing. And often there is alcohol involved. But the point is that there's something very healing about just men being with men and expressing ourselves in that way.
So you're saying that we'd be much better off if we didn't drink alcohol?
Well, that's a personal choice, of course. What I'm saying is that it's the alcohol often that we use to let down our barriers so that we can just sit down and really get to what's going on with us. You know, you ask a man, how's everything going? They're going to say, fine. What's really going on? Well, their life may be in crisis.
Well, weren't we shown that you're, especially in the Italian community, where your problems are your own, and you are left to yourself to figure those out, and you shouldn't tell. It's like Vito Corleone saying, you don't discuss family problems with anyone else outside the family. Are you saying that some of these mores, these older social mores, have done more to foster a closed-minded, or have put us into a smaller pen that we don't like being caught into? Is this what?
I think you've said that very well. We're finding the limited stereotypical role of what is expected of us as men, as fathers, as employers, as employees, etc., to be very, very limiting to the point that the true essence of ourselves, you know, who are we? What is it that what is our bliss? What is our joy? How do we express ourselves? And that's not just emotionally. Men have great fear. We have great fear of our own emotions, because usually when the emotions come, they come in a huge package, and because often we're not as verbal as we would like to be, a lot of men put up their dukes, etc. And so we have great fear of our own anger. We have great fear to express our vulnerability. In our own fears, for example, lie much truth about ourselves and who we really are. We tend to armor up and not want others to have that. The whole one-upsmanship thing that we do in business, for example, and whatever, the continuous competition doesn't really serve us on a community level. As a people, as a culture, as a community, to build community, we're going to have to learn to trust each other and to share. And that is really what hasn't happened.
So what are the common ways that you would mentor a boy or a young man? Because it's much easier to learn when you're young than it is to try to acquire new skills after a lifetime of being, I don't know, aggressive or standoffish towards your feelings. How are the subject matter, how do you mentor a young man to understand these new feelings?
Well, that's actually rather simple in that I worked with a lot of troubled teens, and they want what we want. They want to be praised. They want to be listened to. They want to be heard. They want somebody. I mean, young men shine and they absolutely bloom like flowers when they're shown any attention from older men. They're very thirsty for it. We are very thirsty for it. We're all waiting for the blessings, a blessing from our fathers that many of us have not received. And we perhaps will not receive it unless we ask for it.
Is there an earning process as let's take a father and a son. Does the son in some way, is there an accreditation process? A father may love his son unconditionally, but as for listening or to nurturing, what's the connection in that?
Well, first of all, if we just take time for our sons, we have done more than likely most of our own fathers have done with us. It's tough out there. And it was tough 30, 40 years ago when we were, or at least I was a lad. The point is that most of our fathers tended to be emotionally absent or really absent from the home. And so most current men found that their fathers were worn out by the time they got home from work, or there was an alcohol thing, or they were emotionally detached, and so it was the go ask your mom thing. So in a sense, the father classically is not really involved with the family.
So this confusion starts where you're trained by a feminine figure.
Yes.
You realize you're a masculine figure.
Yes. And so the feminine side, because we all have male and female sides to ourselves. How does that mend together? If a man is too effeminate, he may be teased or ostracized by other men. But it's not about a physical femininity side. It's a way of thinking, correct? Well, yes. From the point of view that our masculine side tends to be our more giving, our more active side. I'm speaking perhaps metaphysically or energetically, or perhaps even emotionally, where our feminine side tends to be much more receiving and how the world perhaps perceives us. There's an ebb and flow in this.
You had worked for many years with Native Americans. You come from Middle America there,
Yes.
Oklahoma. You have experience as a shaman. What is the correlation with the coming of the third age and the relations between a warrior and a guardian?
Well, for example, let's say that the warrior is the guardian. Public service to community, and let's put this perhaps in a Native American sense a good while back. Those who were the leaders and those who were in the warrior societies were in service to the group, to the tribe, to the clan, versus what we have now, which is soldiering. Soldiering is the male aspect wanting to approve something. It is about self, often wanting to be a hero. The guardian or the warrior is the defender of the group in a good way. This archetype has claimed the feminine side. If we want to have a greater connection with ourselves, if we want to really look at ourselves and see truth or see our own illusions, then it's important that we activate that part of ourselves and that we have greater connection with spirit, however that works for the person, the viewing audience. The point is that those that are completely disconnected with their feminine side are likely to be the same one that are going to be somewhat the marauders of the planet as far as environmentally or otherwise. They'll say, I'll take mine, and to heck with everybody else.
It's more of a greedy side of the personality?
Well, it's the competitive versus the cooperative.
Confrontational?
Confrontational. The warrior is going to be, truly in a classical sense, is going to be the defender of all that is, versus being the taker and the abuser of all that is.
So in order to foster a better community cooperation, to be a good father, in order to raise good sons, what should men seek out to balance themselves out? And what would those benefits be?
Well, being honest with ourselves. To look at ourselves,
It's easy to say, my friend.
Exactly.
How does one, do you look in the mirror and say, I'm going to be honest with myself today? I mean, does it, I guess it must come from within like that, to ask yourself that question, that no one can really ask that question for you?
Well, that's also true. We tend to be in defense of our fears and in defense of our beliefs. That makes it very difficult for us to allow truth on a higher level to come into our lives.
Because the reason I ask you that is I struggle with that.
Oh,
I struggle with trying to accommodate, to try to make things clear, but somehow, sometimes it gets lost. How would I improve myself? And I'm always trying to do something to improve my personality. What are some of the techniques that you would use in the men's gathering place that would help someone like me would come in and ask that question of you?
Okay, how would you improve yourself?
Yes.
How would you come to know truth? It's to be really honest with ourselves, and I guess I'm saying the same thing again. It's to step out of our mentality, out of our mentalness, and to connect more with our hearts. To look truly into our hearts in a good way, and to say, what is it that I want more of in my life? Or what do I have too much of in my life? We all want more intimacy. We all want more closeness. We all want more love. And yet we find that to be quite dangerous in some sense, most of us. It's like, I can love many, but will I allow any to love myself? Most of us have that. Most of us can be quite giving and sharing and generous with others. Will we allow others to be generous and sharing with us? I help people. Will I allow people to help me? It's those kinds of things. And if I'm honest about it, then I say, I crave intimacy, yet I fear intimacy. I found that it hasn't been safe for me.
Did you notice that there was a difference between working where you set up the men's gathering place in Dallas than a difference between males that you come in contact now that you're on the East Coast?
East Coast rules, West Coast rules, that kind of thing, kind of the law of the brotherhood, the law of the campfire.
Are there just special types of situations that men would have in being from Texas than what they may have learned and experienced here in the Northeast area?
Well, that's...
Is there a certain kind of cowboy ruggedness? Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's you know, it might be John Wayne versus Don Rickles. I don't know if either of those are a good comparison, but those are stereotypes. And what I find is that generally people are the same everywhere, wherever I've lived, Brazil or wherever. We have different ways of doing things, but the difference between men and women is very, very small. It's 5 or 10% in my opinion. It's mostly biological. But what it is that we need and what we hope to accomplish in our lives are very much the same. As far as the East versus the West, I would say it's more like in my 2-year experience in the Northeast here. So I don't consider myself an expert. I would just say that men here are quicker to defend themselves. We have a lot more silent type where I'm from, and the key is that all men, we have great fear of shame. The East Coast, or let's say the Northeastern man, perhaps is much quicker to put out some kind of verbal, do a little verbal fencing than perhaps others. But it's avoidance of shame. So it's a game we play with each other. The one-upsmanship is about really shame, and who's going to whatever. We laugh about it, but because it relieves the tension of that.
I'd like to cover in the last remaining few minutes that we have about some of the experiences that you had creating some of the sweat lodges that you had created with some of the other men, and again briefly, if you could just kind of tie it into some of the work that you did in Brazil.
Well, okay, that's 2 large pieces, so I'll be brief. What we found as we did numbers of workshops in East Texas, and these are not luxury workshops, they're with camping, large fires, long walks, and just good hikes, and men sharing with men, meaning talking genuinely. What we found is that we all have a great spiritual thirst. What we found was that no matter what we're doing, my pain is not different really or unique from anyone else's. What we found is we were all the same. We thought we were the only one, yet all of us are the same. We all have the same pain.
And we're all on the same journey.
And have the same thirst for God.
Well, that's great, David. David, thank you for taking the time coming down and speak to us about the men's gathering place that you have co-founded and the benefits of men's work and mentoring here on Alternatives. Please come back and speak with us again sometime, and I hope you have enjoyed the program, and we look forward to hearing from you. I'm Al DiGiacomo. Thank you for watching Alternatives.